Okay, well, welcome everyone. Welcome to week number 2. I see we still have some folks who will be joining us along the way, but we'll go ahead and get started because it is 4 o'clock. As I told you last week, our first half of the session will be devoted to a library tutorial provided to us by our librarian, Kelly Janicek. And then once Kelly is done, we'll then take a break. And then in the second half of class, we'll start doing some preliminary information in terms of the basics of American government. But we are very fortunate to have Kelly Janicek with us tonight. I always ask her to come to our 500 sections to talk to you about doing library research in the field of public administration. And she's always gracious enough with her time to come and visit with us. And so if no one has any questions, then without further ado, I'll just turn the session over to Kelly Janicek. So thank you, Kelly.
Thank you. Hello, all. I hope you can hear me. I am a librarian. I have been a librarian at Long Beach for a very, 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 very long time. And in that very, very, very long time, first department I ever got was Public Policy Administration. It's one of the few that I haven't changed, swapped in and swapped out on. My background is policy and law, so it just kind of naturally fits for me to do this. I am basically a social scientist by trade with a librarian degree in there and a paralegal degree on top of that. I just want to let you know that I am one of those people that don't be shy about asking me questions. Librarians live for questions. That is our big thing. Unlike in the classroom where I could see whether your faces, by your face expression, you were getting it or not, or your eyes were rolling at me because you didn't like what I was telling you. Yeah. Even with a mask, I could tell when people were getting it out. I don't have the same teaching style because of the way the little squares work. It's a very different thing. I'm going to go through some, I use a PowerPoint to kind of keep me on track a little bit, but I will go in and out of it quite a bit. What I'll talk about, I will then put you guys in escape rooms to see if you can actually use what I talk about to make sure you understand. Information is very different today, and I want to make sure you understand the value of it and how to get the best from it. There are a lot more studies now than ever before on we are now an information age. And the quality of information, finding the good stuff, you got a 50-50 chance, people. I had a better chance doing the paper books and stuff because it's a lot harder to determine. You have to spend more time looking at the material and evaluating it for its quality. So I'm going to share screen and do this on my slide. You can see the first slide. Yes, no, thumbs up, whatever. Okay, thank you. Let me tell you what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk about starting the research steps because there is, in your discipline, there's a definite, easier way to go about it and start it out and get the best bang for your buck, as they call it, or the best results quicker instead of just stumbling around. Then I'm going to talk about how to use the computer because almost everything now is pretty much online. We started buying electronic books pre-COVID, and now we're pretty much exclusively buying electronic books only, unless we can't get them that way, because reality is you guys are not necessarily coming in the building to use it for the books. People are coming in the building to use it for the coffee lab. They're coming in to use it for study space and meeting space and group space. And then all the other things that we've got that people kind of find fun, like the innovation lab and the artificial intelligence lab and the recording lab and things like that that we have in our library these days. So it isn't just, it's more of a space than it is a repository of materials. Then I'm going to talk about different types of information. That also helps with your research strategies when you know, well, I know that's not going to be an article, or I know that's not going to be a book, it's too soon, but I can at least look for an article and see this thing. And maybe I want, based on a type, a news article, which is more contemporary than a research article, which takes more time to write. And I'm going to talk about those. And then we're going to start to discover information. And I got to tell you, it's scary out there. We have over 300 databases to discover from, not including our OneSearch. I know you guys know the biggest discover one is Google, and everybody uses it. And I'm going to talk about when it's appropriate and when it's not, when you're going to find stuff and when it's just going to frustrate you. And I don't call it actually finding stuff anymore. Our databases will help you discover stuff faster, but everything's now what I call, you kind of throw out there your search terms and splatter against the wall and see if anything falls down. So it's like, it's a research in a different way. It's more discovering what you need. It's what lawyers have been doing for a lot longer than anybody else. In your public policy administration program, the American Psychological Association, APA, is the standard for citing and writing your paper and the format and all that kind of stuff. I'm going to give you some basics on it, on how to cite for a bibliography. I'll show you the manual. I highly recommend you get a copy. You can buy it online or you have it in paper. I prefer it in paper because I like to go back and forth and figure stuff, but I've got some cheap ways that came out during COVID on finding stuff. And then we're going to break into groups and send you off with a topic and see if you can discover something about that topic. Is there anybody who has a question or concern or feel like they're not going to cover anything at this point? Probably for me, because I could see the squares. If you raise your hand, would probably be an easier, put a check mark up or some kind of thing like that would make it easier for me to tell you have a question or whatever. Although chat should jump up somewhere on my screen. I never know. Okay, let's go ahead and go. So with research thinking, one of the things you might want to think about is your pre-work to figure out what you need. Sometimes you're given a topic to write on or research at work or whatever. Sometimes you have to discover a topic, and I'll talk about ways of doing that. But first thing you want to do is determine how big your topic might be, because that might help you focus within your topic to something more specific. My favorite one to use these days is environmental policy. As you know, there is a lot. My last count was over 1 trillion hits in Google alone. I mean, who can find anything with 1 trillion hits? My databases are 1 million hits. I mean, there's so much on the concept of environmental policy, but it breaks down. Are you talking about climate change? Are you talking about what's going on in California, going all electrical, not using gas, all these things that make a difference to environmental policy, because it's policy doing climate change. So sometimes with a topic, you can whittle it down to something that's more manageable. I've got ways of doing that. I've got encyclopedias that break topics down for you. Sometimes just scrolling your topics in a database to see how many hits you have and looking at the filters to see what subtopics there might be. There's various ways you can do that. The other thing you might want to think about is it crossing discipline lines. Environmental policy will come up in environment, and we have a whole bunch of databases over there. Comes up in public administration and politics, which we have a whole bunch of databases there. It comes up in sociology, comes up in geography. It comes up, it's one of those disciplines one of those topics that crosses a lot of lines. Biology, the sciences, health sciences, if you're thinking about how it affects people and their health. So sometimes maybe evaluating your topic, you may determine a different discipline viewpoint on it, which may take you a different place than what I would recommend some of these databases to be. Then you have to develop your vocabulary. And that's kind of a key with a computer these days. It doesn't always think for you. It's still not as smart as they want you to think it is. Even with some of the artificial intelligence stuff that's coming out, that's thinking for us, is still not intelligent enough for it. So I'll talk about how vocabulary may make a difference. The other thing I'm going to talk about is computing searching tips, refining topics by using and, not, the filters of refine, expanding topics by using the concept or. These are called Boolean logic. and they've been around since computers were developed, and they still work really well with our databases. They don't work so well with Google. And I'll show you the big difference that makes a difference then in getting better results in a database that the library purchases versus Google, which is just a discovery tool that just splatters a lot of stuff out there. I'm going to talk about phrase searching. Phrase searching, like if you search the term environmental policy in Google, it will find the phrase environmental policy. It'll find all the articles that talk about environment, and they talk about a policy, which may not be environmental policy, because that's like a very common business term. The environment of the business and the policy they want to do is not necessarily environmental policy, as I mean in climate change. So phrase searching is a way to put within a phrase to make the words all be together. And that's one trick that works in Google, and a lot of people don't know, and it really makes a difference. I'm going to talk about using subject terms and why they're important to get to better results. And the reason why I say that, for a long time, excuse me, for a long time, we used immigrants, we called them aliens. So sometimes using a subject search will help you determine how that word has evolved in its concepts over time. And so I want you to think about that. And then I'm going to talk about how to get the best document type that works best for what you're looking for. Do those research steps, I mean, this is all of 5-10 minutes of thinking, maybe. It's not that hard, but it's something that people forget in the research process that does make it easier in the long run. And I will tell you right now, if you need more on how to use these and, not, ors, determining vocabulary, examples, all this stuff, when I get down to discovery, I'm going to give you a research guide. And on that research guide, there's 2 videos with more precise things. I admit they're about 10-15 minutes long, but you might look at them and kind of get a better idea of some nuances to what I'm talking about if you're not familiar with those things. Anybody with questions, concepts? I'm not seeing anything. Okay. Go to my next page here. Are you ready for different types of information? Okay. Articles by far are your most common types of information you're going to look for, but they come in different things. They're good for finding fairly recent stuff. They give research. They do advice. They're comments on how it should work, shouldn't work. They should be kind of your first choice, but they have some things. At the bottom of my pictures there, I don't know if you guys can see the pension booze, the Mirror, the Daily Sun, what we call the rags or splash sheets that you find on your way out at the grocery store line. Prince Andrew's on the front page of most of them right now. Jolene and Brad Pitt are very common for a long time. These are pop culture things. Libraries do collect them, but they're not really indexed well, and they're probably not what you need for research. So I just want you to know that they exist, and they are a type of information, specifically if you want to know pop culture or what people are thinking at the time. The next one up is you see a line of newspapers. There is a lot of news out there, and that is the most contemporary, current way to get information. I talk about it in the fact that if you are in the job and you know the city council is talking about things and you weren't at the meeting, say last night, you might catch up with a news service to find out what they talked about to know if it affects your job or things you need to be thinking about in your job. So it's a good way to get new sources of information that are happening. They are good for what we call primary information. So something that was a major event in the past, it would document it for you. So news is not a bad thing to use. It's just not research oriented, and you have to think about it from that point of view. The next two that I'm pointing out is the one with the little pig on it and all the dollar bills, Journal of the AWA, the Journal of the American Water Works Association, and PA Times, which is the American Public Administration Association, Public Administration Times. Those are well, they're not magazines, they're journals, but they're not research oriented. They're what we call trade or professional publications. In your profession, you will find them helpful a lot of the times. They write articles about how we laid people off, how we had to create a budget or live through COVID. Those are the things that provide you with insight to how things worked, an organization did something. The American Water Works Association will talk about lead in waters and what things need to be done by the profession overall to fix it. So it might give you policy-oriented ideas that they are lobbying for in a state or federal legislature. So there are things that come out in trade professional publications that are very helpful to find information. And one of our databases actually allows you to pick those type of publications only to get that kind of information. Then we've got the one at the top, the Public Policy and Administration Journal. That is what they call a scholarly or peer-reviewed journal. And I know if I ask, no one will answer or even type in the chat, what is a scholarly peer-reviewed publication? Does anybody know? Anybody gonna type in chat or anything? I gotta find my chat box here. Whoops, let's go back. I'm gonna stop sharing. Oh, there it is. I got chat, yay. Articles written by PhD. Not a bad choice, but not the end all, not the probably the official public reason. But you're right, it has people who have research emphasis. These are what I call research articles. Someone took a thesis before and are reviewed by people with interest. Yes, it goes through a review process. That's very good. So when you get an article published in a scholarly or peer-reviewed journal, depending on the quality of it, it's pretty ritzy. It's pretty high-end. The articles are usually arranged in a particular way. Yes, they are, and I'm going to get to the reviews. They usually have what the concept was. They give you background. They talk about the methodology of the study they did. They talk about how it worked. They give you graphs, data, that kind of thing. They give you background, so there might be a nice bibliography at the end of those articles that set why they're talking about it. Then it goes through, you're right, it goes through a review. These scholarly peer-reviewed journals have a panel of blind reviewers usually who know about the discipline, and when they're assigned the article, that's probably in their area of expertise. And they read the article and they determine if the value of what the research was met what they set out to do. It is a very high end. So usually when you're doing research, you need to probably include something that would be a scholarly or peer-reviewed article. All our databases allow you to limit only to scholarly peer-reviewed articles if that's desired. And I want to make sure that if you're using Google, you want to go over to Google Scholar for that information because it does it outside of Google. I'll tell you one thing, and I'll just share it with you. These journals think this is quality stuff. This has been through, it's been vetted. We want to maintain a good reputation that this is really good research. There was a publication, not in public administration, but in another discipline. It got through the peer review process, interestingly enough. But a person wrote in and said, we're duplicating the research study that they did, the methodology, and we can't get it to work. So the publication went back to the one who published the article, and they admitted they falsified their information. Well, the publication said, no go, this article's out of here. They removed it from all places that they published that article. They took it a step further. Anybody who'd cited that article as good research, their articles also got pulled. That is the level of quality. These are like A++ papers, okay? So you can imagine it becomes very hard to get published in these journals sometimes. So it's kind of a very limiting area. But you guys, when you're working professionally, you may find these articles of help, but my guess is your trade professional journals will be a lot more helpful to you at that level. Anybody with a question?
I have one.
Go ahead.
You're saying that the high quality journals, does that mean that they're H&G are pretty high? Is that what we're talking about? You know, I forgot what that stands for, but I know that the terms mean a lot. So
yeah, there is their services since the 50s. There's a gentleman in California make a lot of money off it, tracking citations and how many times people cited that author in that article. So there are 4 or 5 different ways that you can look at the journal to see how many times their articles are being cited elsewhere. Is something that leads to further in the research. And depending on the type it is, you know, the higher the number, the smaller the number, you know, those are the kind of things. There are some journals that only publish 5% of what's submitted. There are other journals that do 50 or more percent. So it depends on, 1, the discipline, 2, the journal criteria. And so, yes, it makes a difference. There's a big bias in that. Any new evolving research in any new evolving discipline or interdisciplinary study kind of thing usually can't make scholarly peer-reviewed journals because they're so nuanced to the minute in the discipline that they don't open themselves up to the new concepts of research. And that's an evolving area. So you're going to start seeing a lot of things called OAs and greens and golds. And these are what they call open access journals. They are most likely peer-reviewed, scholarly, but they have a little bit more recognition that there are disciplines evolving and they need to be recognized, their research needs to be recognized in literature too. For you, the way our databases work, you may not be able to tell the difference between an OA or open access journal and a traditional paper peer-reviewed journal. You can always chat with the librarian to find out the quality of a journal if you care that much. We have guides on how to figure that out. For your level of research, I don't think it's that big, but it depends. If you're going for a PhD, it may make a difference to you. Did that answer your question and did that make sense?
yes, it does totally. And also for just not PhDs, but I want to add EDDs too.
Yes, directly. You're right. For EDDs, yes. And you got a whole set of journals just in EDD. Okay. This type of information is the first one. Everybody on track with it? The most common one. Books or reports. So I lump all that, what I call gray literature, published out on the internet these days, as reports. They're a little bit more, they're less timely. But they quite often will do history, background, trends. You need to watch their editorial oversight or biased. And a lot of them are government published, okay? Some are like, I'm going to talk about encyclopedias. I talked about, I don't know how to break my topic down. I've got some online encyclopedias that are really good. And there are some books that are out there that have scholarly peer-reviewed DOIs, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit, digital object identifiers. But you can tell a scholarly peer-reviewed book pretty much and journal anymore because they have a DOI. It's kind of an alphanumeric identifier number. And that's kind of now become the standard to tell that they are scholarly peer-reviewed information. Quite a lot of the information published on the web, reports and things, will not have those kind of things. But I put them in the category of trade, professional literature. They're information put out by maybe think tanks, by organizations that are writing policy in Washington, D.C., and they're putting out studies and that kind of thing. So it's not bad information, and you shouldn't ignore it. We've got ways of finding it. Some of our databases now even index that kind of information off the web for you, which would give you a lot easier way of finding it than just Googling. Does everybody understand the basic book or report? Questions? Okay. We're going to my favorite, people. Yes, people are a source of information. Somebody had to write that article. Somebody had to write that book. Somebody had to put out that news. I call it most current, probably pre-publication kind of thing sometimes. There are ways of finding out who, what, where, when, why. APA citations allow you to cite social media, all the various kinds of social media. It's mainly verbal. They tell you how to cite an interview or talk on the phone with somebody. Maybe you call your colleague who went to the city council meeting last night, who was actually there, and have them tell you what they heard. So it's not, you're going to have to find it. It's not as indexed as well, although there are becoming more and more search engines on the social media end to try to find things. But I think you'll find that there is a little in your area as a professional, EDD, PBD, whatever one you're looking at, that you may need to find a person to answer that kind of information. Quite often think tanks, what's the other one? The Pew, which I don't consider them a think tank, but the same concept. They're the public education. They do a lot of survey information. They will have a page that talks about who their people are that you can call for information. It's not uncommon now to see articles with the author's email address and contact information. So people are still considered in there, kind of low on the low fruit hanging, but sometimes it's the information you might be looking for. Then there's the statistics. There's numbers out there like there's no tomorrow. Get ready to type in chat. What is the longest running time series statistics gathered in the United States? You got it, census. Now, how many realize that there's more than one census of population, which is the one mandated by federal law to keep, well, the weather. Actually, the census beats the weather, I think. Although London, probably not. I don't know if it's cultivated. I'll have to look. That's a good one. That's a good thought. I didn't think about the weather. But I'm thinking data that you can actually maybe use more. There at one point were 10 censuses, I guess I'd call them. Census of government, census of industry, census of construction, census of population, census of housing. There aren't as many as they used to be. They now gather kind of one and put it in the American community because 10 years is too long for some of that data. So now they've got something that they take a sampling every other year. So we have more current information. But this is data that when you gather the numbers, you need to interpret it and use it. And it comes in various formats. It comes in charts like on the bottom, or may come in a graphic like on the top. The current one that's very popular is putting out statistics with what they call infographics. And there are more and more of those coming out, and I've seen some of the best explanations using an infograph on how to understand the data. So there are ways now of using the numbers, and I'm going to tell you how you can get data statistics. We've got a page for that to help you find the statistic stuff. Those are what I call the 4 pieces types of information out there. Does anyone have any questions about those 4 types? Did you understand why I talked about them? I think this is where we come into play. Because if you need something contemporary, you might start with an article. You need something like history, you might start with a book. So if you need to support a concept, there might be numbers that will do that. So you might need to do statistics. For including in a paper, we are writing visually. Infographics is what you're talking about? Yeah, or putting numerical data in a paper. Actually, scholarly articles tend to have a lot of statistics in them. Yep. Other questions? Are we ready to move on? Are we thinking we're keeping up? Didn't think you'd have to redo Research 101. So I'm going to talk about how to discover information. From this slide, there is a link there. Note that it's csulb.libguides.com. It is not csulb.edu. The campus web server, to change a link on it, is 2 weeks. I can't have you guys have information that takes 2 weeks to update. So we outsource to this service that helps us create research guides. And this one's particular for public administration. It has its own address, so if you want to keep it. But now I'm going to stop sharing this and take you over and show you how to find it on the library webpage. Woohoo! Because I want you to be able to find it in case you don't have you forget the link. So where is my webpage? No, that's going to be it. Okay. So if you haven't been to the library or haven't seen on your little single sign-on chiclet, there is a library one there. It's csulb.edu/university-library, or you can type in library. Down here, we have a version of Google called OneSearch. Good place to find those reports off the web, books, things like that. But it is a discovery tool and you have to really work at it. So I'll talk about that in a minute. But what I want to talk about are the research guides. And just so you can see, we have, how many do we have? I think we have 137 of them. Every discipline on campus should have at least one, and you have a public administration one. But if I go, that's why I gave you the address, because P's are way at the end. But maybe you want to do it from the political science point of view, the larger concept within public policy. There's a whole research guide on statistics and data sets. If you're interested in transportation and logistics, there's a whole research guide on that. I also do political science. If you need things in law, news, got a whole bunch of them there too. So when I clicked on that link, it got me to the page. And this is what the Public Policy Administration Research Guide does. It gives you help in focusing to those informational sources that will get you the best information first. Now, I've got a lot of things on it. We're going to talk about how to use APA citing. I'm going to talk about this one in a minute. If you have to write an annotated bibliography, if you need help, we have 24/7 chat with a librarian. There is a librarian around 24/7. Admittedly, it's not always us. Oh, if you look at the bottom of the screen, you see Ask a Librarian. There it is. It pops up all the time. It's worldwide. And I'm sorry, we were chatting online and doing all this stuff pre-COVID. We've been online since 1995 doing some of this stuff. So you can ask a librarian question. They'll take you through and help you with your vocabulary, which database would probably be better. They will help you as much as they can. If you're doing your research, which is very common between the hours of midnight and 2 and 3 a.m., we have the data that tells us that. We aren't around. I'm sleeping myself. Thank you very much. And you'll probably get somebody, Australia, I haven't done the math. I know that when I do Monday chat at 11 a.m., I get a lot of people from England. Guess what time it is? It's 1, 2 a.m. in the morning for them. Sorry about my voice. Librarians are pretty good about helping you find stuff. It's the same. A lot of us have access to the same materials. But if they can't help you, they will refer you back to us, and we will pick up the next time we are in the building or on reference. And we do reference pretty much Monday through Sunday. We don't do Saturday. We do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Sunday. She does Sunday through Friday. There we go. That'll help you. The other thing I wanted to mention on this page is I have the access requirements. So if you're having technology issues with connecting to things, you might look at the screen. It gives you some good FAQs on what might help or work to help make access better. That's the basics of what the guide does, but now I'm going to talk about finding sources. So get sources. So remember, I talked about articles being the number 1 thing that you would probably look for. Well, if you're doing specifically public administration, these are 3 databases I'd recommend you use. If you're working in policy, these are 4 databases. That was 3. 4 databases. If you want something that does current issues in your area, here are a couple other places to look. I want to show you how many databases we've got here. The other way here. We currently are maintaining, does it give me the number? 334 databases. Are you going to know which ones you want? No. So when you use the research guide, say you want the politics end of it and you really want to go to political science, use that one. It has some different choices. They each focus on what's best for that discipline or that topic, what'll get you the most. It doesn't cover everything, and I won't lie to you. Okay, this is my big sales pitch. Why do I want to use a database when I can just Google it or Google Scholar it? I know you're all thinking that. I know you're all thinking that. Okay, big difference. One, why waste $5 million a year and not use what we pay for? Yes, we spend about $5 million a year in databases, people. This is very pricey materials. A lot of them are coming out of Europe and they know they've got the market. It has a lot of value added that Google cannot do or Google Scholar cannot do. In Google Scholar, you can limit to date, last week, last month, last year, last 3 years, last 5 years. That's about it. I got filters on here that'll gear down to geography. My policy one even talks about, I can't remember the subtopic there. I know my ABI one talks about if I want it in the public sector or the private sector. If I want in the government sector or it breaks down because each article is looked at and given all these special search areas. The other thing that's more important than anything else is the databases cover a journal from cover to cover from whatever the first day they picked it up, which is usually volume 1, issue 1, to whatever the most current issue is. What shows up in Google Scholar is self-promoted and self-placed. So some people don't have to put their articles out there. People know about their articles. They don't need to put it in Google Scholar. And needless to say, you don't get all the research. What's not to say that this minor article that hasn't been cited 500 times yet by this author who did kind of do the same topic you're looking for and did a fairly good, and it's indexed, but it didn't make Google Scholar. So there's a big difference, and I want to make sure you understand that. So we recommend, of course, the databases. And if you don't know what they do, the little I tells you. They'll even tell you how many, when they started. Public Administration Abstracts has been indexing since 1956. That should give you lots and lots of journals. Politics database, 1972. ABI Inform, does it have the date in there? It doesn't, but it's 1965. It's one of the first databases out there. So we don't want you not to have the things you need by using these databases. Let me take a minute and look at all your smiling boxes and see if anybody has a question, because now I'm going to show you the how-to. Yes, no? Because we're going to start to discover information is where I'm going with this. So I'm going to talk about get the sources, and then we'll do a little quiz. So let me show you how to get the sources. And actually, let me do my favorite test run here. Well, I should be able to do that. Okay. Do you see Google? Well, I can't see everybody now. Is Google what's showing on my screen?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, thank you. Sometimes my box is the stuff all over it. Environmental policy. I'm waiting to see how many hits we got. 1.6. It's more than a million. What comes after a million? A billion. 1.65 billion. It should have gone up. It should be higher than that. And you do know if you do a Google search, you will not get the same results even an hour from now. Okay, one of the things I talked about was phrase searching. So we're finding, yes, environmental policy, but every time you use the word environmental and talking about the policy of the environmental, the company of business. This works here. Environmental, I literally want it to be the phrase environmental policy. Look how many we came down, 67.7 million. And I now know these are definitely using the phrase that I want. But who's going to look through 67 million? Okay. Even if I did Google Scholar, it's outrageous. So let me take it over and let's look at, I'm going to do the politics database. And you guys do know that if you open up your single sign-on and leave that open, you don't have to log in. It should automatically bypass it once you've logged in. Thank you, they were able to work that. We were fighting it the first couple months saying, no, you can't let them not. So, of course, I'm not going to type in environmental policy without using my quotations. And I can narrow it, but I can do anywhere. I can do title, I can do search, whatever. I can limit sub peer reviewed right here. Never limit to full text. Never, never, never. I'm going to tell you why in a minute, but don't do it that way. You lose out on stuff. I can do dates right here, but I've got stuff over my search key. I got to get to my search key now. Whoops. I need. Okay. There. Sorry, I had thing pop up that. I only have 88,000 environmental policy here. Big difference. The first one's by the federal government, come from Congress, by the House of Natural Resources. Of course, it's going to be about environmental policy. Okay. Who's going to look at 88,000? 10 at a time. None of you guys. I know it. Nobody goes first, excuse me, past the first 10. Are you seeing the left-hand column? Limit to, this is a refine. This is where the databases pay for themselves. I can limit to the peer-reviewed stuff. That will drop all the federal government documents. 47, I dropped half right there. I can limit by date. I only want since 2020. I'm down to 3,000. I can limit to document type. Do I want an editorial? Do I want a commentary on the topic? I can limit by subject. This is where they spend their best time. And I won't be able to find it, but there was an example I was able to use 2 years ago. I was doing the environmental policy and doing it like I'm doing here. I was in a different database and I did the subject heading environmental policy. I included it. And the one article popped up. It gives me, do I want to write about energy policy instead of environmental policy, it helps you focus your topic. That's the way to narrow down. Do I want green gases? It helps you then narrow down your topic. If your topic is too big, and environmental policy is way too big. I have 2,000 now. It's a few more screens that I want, but at least I can work it, okay? I can't show it to you, but what popped up is all these articles use the term environmental policy. We can see it highlighted. But they were also given the subject heading environmental policy. But at that point, we did find an article that didn't pop up with it. Let's see where this is. Here's one that I don't see environmental policy popping up. Do you? But they looked at it and they determined it was about environmental policy. It's policy making that deals with climate change. It doesn't really think about it as a term, but the International Political Science Review does it as a policy. Okay. Now this article is not here. I want the article. Why can't I get the article? Over here, you've got get full text. There's the article. That I know B. Guy Peters. You guys should know B. Guy Peters. We're going to talk about some books he wrote here in a minute. He's a popular PPA guy. Okay. Where was I going with this? When you limit to full text, you're limited to full text that's in that database. But you remember we have 334 databases. It may be full text in another place. The other advantage to it is there are a couple places where there are international public administration journals that I can't justify buying them. So what it'll link you to is a way to get the article free, not Google $50, please, free, usually 48 hours or less, digitized and sent to you. Okay. That way some journals, there's a Journal Brain. I think it's like $7,000 an issue. I mean, it's outrageous. But if we buy it by the article, it's only $300 or $400 an article. So we pay for it by the article instead of buying the journal outright. Okay, so this gives you a chance to get whatever you need, because our purpose is to get whatever you need. Are there questions about that? Did I lose my search? I did.
I just want to say that it's nice that you and your organization, the library and librarians and others, are there to help us. It's amazing. It's a great resource.
That's our life. We like to answer questions and help people. Okay, so the public administration abstracts does have full text links and full text in it. That one was paper up until, I remember I hassled the publisher of that one and said, you got to get it online. You got to get it online. And finally they put it online. We're happy. It truly indexes public administration journals. So that's why it's listed first. It would be your go-to if you want something in public administration, which may include policy, where your EDDs may find stuff there, okay? The broader one is politics database, which includes a sub-database in it on policy. It is a database just on finding policies. I also does PAIS, Public Affairs Information Service, which has been around since 1908 or something like that. That indexes state government information. So you're going to find some more targeted, if you're dealing with governments, kind of thing in there. I want to show the ABI Inform, although the politics index is like that. Maybe I'll show you public. You see how the little guy over here, they look different. The database vendors have a different format. So I better show you public administration abstracts just so you can see the difference a little bit. They work the same, look the same. Okay, I'm going to do, no, I want the subject, and I can even search it by subject in here. They've got they do book reviews here. I can get environmental things, environmental disasters, environmental impact statements. See, that's where environment comes up. You don't want impact statements unless you're doing something. Environmental justice, environmental music. There you go. Environmental policy. See, they only do 600. I'm going to click on it, add it to my search it, and it's searching only those articles or book reviews that have the subject of environmental policy. Okay. Again, I can refine it. I can do scholarly. I can do by date. I can do language, only English, because I only got 11 left because they're fairly new. I do it out to 2000, I got 415. They got a Spanish one. And I will tell you, they do international publications. And yes, we have some of them. They are published in the language that they're published in, and you'll have to use Google Translator. Okay, we don't. Works the same way. So here's something on the Yangtze River in China. Again, article's not here. This one, they says, get it. Get it at CSULB. Do, 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 do. Do, 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 do. Okay, this one we don't have the journal. I want it. I want to get an article. So I'm going to sign in for more options. If you're signed in, you're signed in. It takes you right away. Get it. They promise it within 24 hours. Now, where on Google, if you go and you have to pay for it, you can search, But if they pay for it, you might as well come back and get it from us. We pay for it. You don't have to. We don't pass the cost on to you. Okay? Good? Are we good? The other thing you might want to know about, cite. I'm citing an APA. They can't cite. Oh, but the database, I can email it to this reference to myself. And when I send it, I want to tell them I want it in APA 7th when they send it to me. And what it'll look like when it comes, it will have most of the citation for you. And all you have to do is cut and edit and paste. That is a biggie. This is something the databases can do for you. Google Scholar cannot. So the databases allow you to email your references. You can put them, if you put them in a folder and you haven't set up a sign-in, you lose the folder when you log out. I like to individually email mine or put a couple in a folder. What's it doing? Where's it going? Yeah, it's trying to make me log into my folder. I don't want to log into my folder. Email a bunch at a time so I know. And I'm going to talk about in a minute software maintenance kind of things that'll help a little bit. Okay. Does anybody have a question? I'm rattling around and I can't tell if you guys are. Okay. When I test you, we'll see what happens. Okay. So you see the difference between the two vendors. Okay. I wanted to mention the ABI Inform. Remember earlier I talked about a particular kind of publication, a trade or professional journal. This guy does it. It's American Business Institute. They've been around since the beginning of time. The other thing it'll do is because it does business, I don't know that you want business. It has classification codes and it allows you to pick things that are by nonprofit, or maybe you want public sector. So you take out all the corporate stuff, which the majority of it is. Okay. I'm going to go public sector. So I'm going to add it to my search. And we will do, I'm changing my topic. And I'm going to search it. I've got 2,000 just on climate change. Now, here are my trade publications. Of those 2,000, more than half are out of the trades. I limit to date. Boy, there hasn't been anything on climate change since 2017 in here. Interesting. I still have the majority of the articles are in trade publications. So like corn and soybean digest for the farmers. They're talking about climate change. Let's be real about it. So you start to see unusual things here. But these are the organizations that support a discipline. And in doing so, they put out articles that help the discipline. Biocycling, okay, air conditioning. Again, you've got your refine on the left. So I can narrow it by topic. This one allows you to narrow by organization, location. So say you only want California. There's 6 left. 6 articles specific to California and climate change. Okay, your geography. Language, people. It indexes people. This one does. Again, most of these articles in this database are full text. If not, it has the Get It at CSULB button to link to the full text or a chance to get a copy of the article for free. Questions about finding articles? finding the different types of articles. You will find some news services in the politics database. But if you really want news, my recommendation is go back to the databases and limit by newspapers or news services. We have 47 news services. I want to mention Social Index. It's sociology based, anything to deal with people. And if you're dealing with people, always can you deal with people and politics? They cross quite often. They have, they index a lot of different articles that you might find helpful from that point of view. Okay, let's see, just confirm it. If I was looking for something specific from, say, the Department of Transportation, I would use the ABI Inform, not the other sources, correct? Not necessarily. I have databases specifically to the government sources. So and I have a transportation guide. Okay. So when I get to that point, when I'm doing when people are asking individual, I'll show you those choices. Okay. How to do that. Well, let me do it this way. In the library A to Z data list, you can limit by all subjects. So your public administration comes up again, but also transportation is under engineering, sorry to say. We're indexing them again. Let me go to research guides. Go down to public administration. Pull the transportation guy. Find articles. TRID. TRID is who you want to do. Well, no. They're by the Transportation Research Board, not the U.S. Department of Transportation. We're doing safety literature. That, I think, is by the U.S. Department of Transportation. Yeah, I'm not seeing a good choice. Send me a chat and I will look it up and send me, I'll show you how to contact me right now. Send me an email off the main research page that y'all should be looking at on the home. There I am. You can email me. Send me an email and remind me, and I will send some links of databases I'd recommend. We are re-indexing that page, and that doesn't surprise me that we can't find it. So I will work on that. This is the one I want. I want this. Okay. But thank you for the question. And yes, we have stuff for you. The other things I want to mention, remember I talked about reports or books. I mentioned encyclopedias. And I got all excited about B. Guy Peters. Do you see his name right there? I know his handbook very well. So if they have a lock on them, they're online. And if they don't have a lock on them, they're probably paper. Not everything is online, or I can't afford it all. Just saw one online encyclopedia. I want it so bad, but it's $8,000. It's like, eh. This allows you to go in and then do some searching. And these are nice, take a subject apart and understand it kind of things. So you can go on my table of contents for this one, because it's arranged by your major topics in your discipline. My favorite way is to search it or do the subject index there at the end. So let's see if they do anything on environment. The letter E, electronic, environment, organizational theory of environment. Well, I'm going to go to those pages, and I click on the pages. I don't have to turn the pages, I just click on them. Okay. So on this page starts a idea of what organization, whatever, environment. So you've got, what's the big topic of this one? It's organizational theory and public administration. The thing about this one is if you use it, you can cite it. And guess what? It has a DOI. It's a scholarly publication in book form. You can download the PDF. You can get the link, can share it, embed it, or do whatever. The other thing it should do at the end of the chapter, don't get dizzy watching this. Don't do this at home. It has a bunch of references. Those that they consider the core to understanding that big concept. Okay? Those are articles, books that you can go back and look up. And I'll take it one further. Discovery tools today will take these articles and they will track them. They will tell you how many times the TVA and Grassroots, written by Selnick from the University of California, Berkeley, has been cited by other people and cited in other places, which allows you then to find the most current research that's using that for the basis of their research. That's the advantage of using an encyclopedia to understand. And I've got the broad, but you've got specific one, which it's a nice one. That's why I got all excited when I saw BP, Guy Peters. Yeah, I know that name. Are we still here or are we all left and gone home? Okay. I know. I'm not hearing from you. Not sure where we're at. Let me take a minute and talk about a couple other things that are on this page, and then I'm going to make you work. I'm going to make you work. See if you really got it now. You asked about transportation, U.S. Department of Transportation. I have what I call my PPA topics guide here, and give me, I won't get to it tonight, but tomorrow I'll put up a page in here and it'll link you to things to find the U.S. Department of Transportation materials, because I know they've got their own search engine. Okay, and that way then you don't, it'll help you. Okay, so if you guys ask me a question, it isn't real obvious from these pages where it is. These are links to things that I have found out there that I consider credible. Used to publish in paper, but now they publish on the internet, and these have sources that you might find of help. In the beginning, I talked about how to start research, to understand the steps, the search tips. Admittedly, this was during COVID. I don't look like that anymore, like the rest of us. But if you need to go back and review and understand, this might help. If you have the class on finding policy, this is the list of finding policy information. I even have policy sites of interests and how some books that might help. Then I have policy directories, or those organizations that work towards developing policies. You didn't think a librarian did anything. There is a class where you have to do your research, design, and instruments. We have some stuff for you. Here's some stuff for you. Okay. If you have to do the class on program evaluations, here's some stuff for you. Some stuff on how to cheat Google and find some stuff. How to cheat our version of Google in the OneSearch and find some stuff. And then some books or encyclopedias to help you understand. Are we good with at least understanding what's here? I know there's so much stuff. I try to sub-parcel it out to where you might need it, but always what you need is on a page you didn't know. Okay. I want to go back to my slideshow because now I want a little quiz. Okay, let's see. You can shout it out when you turn on your mic. You can put it in chat. You can raise your hand. The best type of article to use for research is gossip, news, peer-reviewed, trade professional. I got someone who said peer-reviewed. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. You're reinforcing it. Yes, yes, yes. If you're a working professional, which is the best article to consider? That's a good answer. Depends. You're right. But you might find the trade professionals a lot more helpful for your kind of questions that you need to figure. Yep. Okay. Other question. Web pages and reports from the web need editorial oversight to confirm credibility of sources information. I would validate it via Ask a Person, author credentials, or Wikipedia. I didn't go into this real well, but I think you guys are smart enough to kind of work your way through it. Oh yeah, you're coming through. Author credentials. I kind of gave it away when I said, P. Guy Peters. Oh yeah. The credentials of the author that have the background to do the publication. You're right. Yeah. Wikipedia's come a long way. We used to not like it, but we can't say no anymore. Their editorials are a lot better. They can't go in and edit it and put false information in it. But sometimes it's a good place to go see, to break the topic a little bit, and or answer a question at the bar because you're going to lose a bet, or to find some sources. There are a lot of people who are kind of into this research thing, and they might do a nice bibliography of sources on topics. And sometimes Wikipedia has some good things to look for. Okay, what else we got here? Are we ready to move on to the APA manual? Let me just take a minute and make you understand what I'm talking about. Right now, there's that chat AI that's really being talked about because you can put a whole lot of information in it and it will create a paper for you. Problem is, it's not very good yet. It still looks like it's a computer-generated paper. But it does no double spaces. Yeah. If you want to maybe think about how to, you can add data to it, and it's will kind of create a nice outline. So if you don't know how to put your topic together or work with it, for some reason it does that feature very well. So it might be worth something to use to put your paper structurally together. The thing it doesn't do is do your citations for you. And I got to tell you, if you refer to something, actually quote something, you have to cite it from what source you got it from. Do you understand the distinction? You may look at a whole lot of articles before you start writing your paper, and somewhere in the back of your mind, oh, which one? I want to quote out of that one, but you know, this one I can kind of talk about the concepts it talks about. If you looked at it and used it, you need to cite it. If you don't, on our campus, that's called plagiarism, and it can be bad for you. And we recently had a bunch of plagiarism cases. Everybody thought they could copy it off the internet and plagiarize to their head's defense, and guess what? Not going to work. Librarians can still catch you. We got it figured out. But that's okay. As you're in the databases, email yourself your citations and things like that. That will help you keep track of what sources worked. And it put them in APA, so that helps you. It has its advantages. So let me talk about what APA should look like. What I should have showed you was my book, which is right here in front of my face. I never live without my APA book because almost all the disciplines I take care of use APA. They're in the 7th edition. So if anybody tries to sell you the 6th, laugh in their face. We do have citing guides on the front homepage of the research guide for APA. I have some links on how to cite an APA that APA put out during COVID so people could understand. We have software. We have EndNote is available to you guys. Mendeley and Zotero are free out there. If you look at the library main page and look at workshops, we have a librarian who does Mendeley and Zotero workshops on how to use it. EndNote's a way to gathering if you're doing a long-term project and you want to download a whole lot of citation stuff and then abstract it and kind of do stuff like that. It's come a long ways. When my project started 12 years ago, it wasn't really good enough for me to use, and I'm sorry I don't have it enough because I think I'm maintaining close to 8,000 sources right now. So you can imagine having that information would be important to me. What does a citation should look like in APA? Well, it's author's last name, first initial, middle initial, if there's a middle initial. I noticed, did you notice that B guy was BG? Okay, so things like that happen. You now in APA can go up to 30 authors. More power to you. You guys don't have that problem, but in the health sciences and healthcare administration, it's not uncommon for them to have 15 to 20 authors. Your year is important. Your title, your article, but note that the first word is capitalized and the rest of them are lowercase. I'm going to talk about that because that's where your editing comes into play. Proper nouns are uppercase, or if there's a colon and the article, the title continues, that first word is uppercase. Those are important nuances that you're going to have to learn to correct in the softwares. Your name of your periodical or journal, it's all, you know, upper lowercase. Accordingly, it's italicized. Your volume number is italicized. Your issue number in parentheses is not. Comma, first page dash last page. I'm going to show you examples. ABI Inform, which has been around since the 60s, tells you page 425, article 16 pages. You're going to have to do the math and put it in there or look at the article and look at the last page. Then if the article's scholarly, it will have a DOI, a digital object identifier. That was created by APA just before the 7th edition came out. It has become the standard. But what happens is some of these are generated, are computer generated citers don't quite have it down yet. They don't understand it should look like https://doi.org/ and whatever that alphanumeric thing is. If you cite a title, say you take that chapter of the organizational theory thing out of that encyclopedia I had, there are your authors or editors, your year. You cite the title of the chapter of the book, lowercase, upper lower, in the authors, editor, here's your authors, here are your editors, your title of your book, edition, pages, your publisher. You no longer have to put that stupid city in because the publishers change cities constantly. And that particular article that we saw in the Encyclopedia of Public Administration had a DOI. So it would then be looking like this in the pink up. If you have a report, you need your organization's name, the year, the title of the report, upper lowercase, the agency in charge of the report, and then the link on the web. That's the basic look of the ones.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure, go ahead.
On the previous slide, on the first one, do you,
Oops.
the other way, yeah. Do you need to put the HTTPS in front of the DOI or just the DOI forward would be enough?
Nope, you have to put the HTTPS.
Okay, thank you.
That's the new standard because you are linking, you are telling them that they have to go out and use software to get to look that article up. Okay. DOIs are created, then all the publishers created a database that links DOIs so your faculty member can check to make sure that's a scholarly article by looking up the DOI address. That's why they want that. Okay. And that comes into play. Here's the correct way a DOI should look like. And this is the incorrect way that my databases like to download. There's the plain DOI. It's not acceptable. Some of our databases pick up the access way that we're logging into it, which doesn't help you. So you're going to have to edit it back to here, the start at 10, and put that https.org and then put the 10. You notice how they're all the same numbers. That's the correct way. This is the wrong way. Does that make sense about what the DOI should look like and what you might see? Okay. So this is Public Administration Abstracts. This is an old article. I have it both in paper and online. So if I go to the paper and look it up, see how it says 17 pages? I don't even have the first page. I gotta find it. So I went online. It tells you where to find the article full text. I go. Because this is a scholarly peer-reviewed journal, and this was published in 2016, it officially shouldn't have a DOI because DOIs haven't been around that long. But like I said, the publishers of scholarly peer-reviewed articles went back and put DOIs on all these articles. So sometimes when you go to get the article, that may be where you get the DOI. So now they take it, they provide it, and they show a site, and you can download the site and see that it looks like that. Oh, this article's from 2001. Okay, I knew it was old. But I've got my author's last name, initials, year, name of article, colon, proper name, lowercase, the name of the journal, volumes italicized, issues not, page numbers, and my HTTPS DOI, and my DOI. Some have alphabet, some of them are alphanumeric, some have a lot of other characters in. It's like a tracking service, like, you know, when your Amazon thing comes, all that tracking things. It's the same thing. It's just a tracking number. Does this make sense? Does anybody have questions? Most of the current stuff is putting the DOI, so when you download it, it'll actually be there. Okay, so I downloaded some examples. The first one, what is wrong? It's from Public Administration Abstracts. Anybody want to tell me by chat or shout out what is wrong with that citation that I would have to correct? Nobody wants to take a guess? That's right. The capitals in the article title there are too many capitals. So federal will be capitalized, strategies lowercase, induce lowercase, resistance lowercase, states lowercase, participate lowercase. But the ACA Health Exchange is a proper name. That would have to stay in uppercase. So that's why I pointed that one out. Sometimes you do, you know, the American Care Act Health Exchange is an official name. What about the next one? The ABA, I download the citation, besides the little question marks. What else is wrong with it? If you didn't know, the question marks are commas. The retrieved from, correct. You don't say retrieved from. The HTTP should be, it's ABI Inform, so it is Employee Benefit Advisor Online. Period. There should be no even retrieved from, because this is an online publication that is published in ABI Inform. So you don't have to tell where it's from. The retrieved from, which is MLA still, I believe, and this was in the previous version of the APA, just tell them it's a Employee Benefit Advisor online. They can look that journal up and find it. So yeah, other than the question marks, which are supposed to be commas, not the bottom, the top. Yeah. I can't remember what that is. Yeah. But you will see a lot more dirty stuff in ABI Inform because of the age of it and the type of things they index. What about the politics database? What's wrong with that? Apostrophes. Thank you. That's the word I was looking for. Those are supposed to be apostrophes, yes. It may not have a DOI if it's not a scholarly article. So all it tells you is the journal that it's in. There's something else that's kind of wrong with that one. Because planning is not a scholarly journal. It's a trade professional journal by the American Planners Association. See, I know weird stuff. All caps, that's the one. Yep. The politics database has 3 sub-databases in it, and one of them, by the nature of what they do, they all cap all the article titles. So by default, you get weird things like that. So that's something you would have to edit. So I want to make sure you understand that. Okay. I want to let you go to a Zoom room, escape rooms. So let me stop sharing because I want you guys to kind of see if you could do this. She's so mean. Okay. Give me a minute to find pages I need here. There's one. When I break you out, I'm going to break you out, since there's what, still only 14 of us? 16 of us. And there's only 14 of us. I'm going to break you out into 3 groups, okay? And there's a Google form, if you don't mind accessing. There are 6 different topic choices. So when you break out into your room, if you're 1, you should probably choose one of the first 2s. If you're 2, pick out, second 2. If you're last, you get the last choice or whatever. And what this is going to do is kind of take you through I'm going to ask you for the topic. I gave you a topic basically. And by going through the Google form, you can work as a group, and if someone can share screen, that helps, or if you can talk it through. You're going to work your way, seeing if you can find an article that fits the question. I'm going to ask, there's things on there, okay, there's the topic. What words are you going to use? And it's a sentence, because you can't do Siri or any of those guys, Alexis. When you're in the databases, you type in words. You don't type in the sentence. So you need to pick the concept out of that research concept topic, thesis statement, I guess I'm going to call it. What keywords are important to find? They're going to be found in the article you need. So when you type in the words, remember you use and between them, or you filter them by subjects. What you want to then look at the options that you're going to get by each topic, what databases could be a potential, and figure out which one might work the best. Then I want you to work through to see if you can't find at least one article. I'm not that set on what article you find, but I'd prefer if you pick something that actually works, would be logical, and not just a fake one. I don't correct this assignment, but I do want to see if you understand. And then I'll jump in and out of the rooms to see what you're doing or what you're struggling with, to see what got lost in translation at that point. Do you think we can do this? I got a thumbs up. The rest of you are maybes. Okay. So I am going to break you out. Did everybody get a chance to click on the link? I can resubmit it when you get to the breakout rooms. I could rebroadcast it because sometimes it gets lost when we break out. But I will make sure it gets to you again. Okay. I'm going to, I didn't ask if I could do breakout rooms. Yes, I can. And we're going to do 3, 2. Okay. Do you see your rooms? I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then I got a 4 group. So if you're room 1, you want to take the topic. Oh, did I not open the rooms? Did they not open? There we go. I'm sorry. You need to tell me. Okay. Dave, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
It's past 5:30. I didn't expect to go this long.
Oh, that's okay. Go
'Cause
as
you
long as you need. We're fine.
Okay. Because we'll probably be another at least 10 minutes, so I don't know how much that helps you.
Oh, that's absolutely fine. Yeah, whenever you're done, I'll just give them a short break, and then we've got the rest of the time. So take your time.
Okay. I like this smaller group because we hit things like I did water and lead in quotes, and I said, is that usually? I mean, then we talked about lead and water. That should be in quotes. It's like suddenly the reality is making more sense to them. That's what I love about this exercise.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Welcome back.
Be right back.
No problem. Did this help make sense then of what all I talked about when you put it in practice?
For me, it did, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely.
Okay. Are there things that still don't quite make sense? Because I put you guys as groups so you could talk it through, but in the future, you may be by yourself doing this, and that's why I want to make sure it makes sense.
On that subject, it was just for me. I was having trouble fine-tuning it to get like an article on budgeting for America. I kept coming up with other continents and stuff. It was weird. I didn't, then in the search terms, I added United States, and then I don't know what happened after that. But
you were an ABI Inform?
yes.
On the left, it has locations. You can narrow it down by country. That one will down to state. That one even gets down to LA, Los Angeles quite often. If that's the articles about LA, which are usually people say, well, Long Beach, well, you got to go use LA because we're usually the region. You can focus it that way. Sometimes I use language. Some of our databases are very international, so language sometimes helps narrow, but a lot of the databases have geography in them. Public Administration Abstracts does not, but ABI Inform does. I think Politics Database does. Sociindex, I can't remember. Other things or concerns or we didn't talk about evaluating the article and determine if it's worth you need it or not, but there are things that can help you do that also. I don't want you to leave and think, oh, I won't remember this tomorrow. Well, you probably won't. That's the problem with this kind of thing, because you don't do it every day, unlike me, who does everything, all this stuff all the time. There's my contact information. And remember, if you have that LibGuide link, you can do, you can chat with a librarian anytime, even when I'm not there. It's not uncommon for students to email me. If I think it's we need to talk, because I need to take you through and make you understand, then I would make an appointment and we'd do a Zoom meeting, or you guys don't come to campus, but do a Zoom meeting if needed. There's other librarians who, if you chat, they can usually help you for the most part. It isn't like we're not all doing the same thing. So I talked for 2 hours. 4 to 5, 5 to 6. Wow. A librarian who talks, wow, loud. You know who gets in the library, who gets complained about the most, talk the loudest? The librarians. We don't know how to be quiet. Whoever gave us that concept, I don't know who they were. The person who wanted the transportation stuff, watch the LibGuide, and I'll make sure that under the PPA topics, I'll put stuff on how to find the U.S. transportation. So I'm pretty sure they have their own search engine for their own materials. If not, I've got some other things that'll work. Watch for there to come up. Anything else? I don't know if there he is. I know.
Oh, I'm here.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Kelly. I really do appreciate it. And I always tell all my classes, this is probably the most important lesson that you're going to have throughout the entire program, because this is information you'll be using in all of your future courses. We don't do a lot of research in this course because it's the introductory course, but as soon as you get into some of your future courses, you'll be doing a lot of research. And so this is vital information that will be useful throughout your entire time in the program. So thank you again, Kelly. I really appreciate you taking the time
No problem.
to take us through this. So thank you. Well, everyone, if you would like to, let's take a brief break. So let's make it a short one. Let's take a break until 6:05 and then come back at 6:05. We'll go through our information on American government, and then I'll talk to you a little bit about the assignments that are coming up for next week. So take a break to 6:05 and come on back. Thank you, Kelly. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, well, welcome back, everyone. I hope that Kelly's session was helpful for you. And again, it's being recorded. And so if you need to go back and get a refresher, the link will be up on our Canvas site by tomorrow morning. And as Kelly said, she's always available for you to reach out and ask her questions. You will be doing research in some of your future courses. And so it's a good idea for you to kind of get this basic information on how to do public administration research now in 500 so that you'll have that information for moving forward. I do want to thank everyone for posting your introduction. I've gone through and read all of those. Also, for those of you who had the opportunity to do the pre-assessment of American government, thank you for doing that as well. The only purpose of the pre-assessment is just give me an idea of the information we should cover tonight and next week when we talk about the foundations of American government. So it's ungraded, it's anonymous, so if you didn't get a chance to do it, that's okay. It was just a pre-assessment just for my purposes. So quick reminder before we get into our substantive material for what remains of the class session. You have 2 assignments that are coming due for next week. You have your first Canvas essay that you will be looking at Federalist Paper number 10 by James Madison and answering the question of, are we more factionalized today as the country than we were back in Madison's time when he warned us about factions in Federalist Paper number 10. We will have a little bit of time tonight to talk about Federalist Paper number 10, just can get you ready for that Canvas essay. That essay is due on the 6th. Then you have your initial skills self-assessment that is due on the 7th. Several people have already turned in their initial skills self-assessments, and I've responded to those. Again, no right or wrong answers. It's just an honest assessment of where you are in terms of those skills identified on the self-assessment. It's 5 points for turning it in. So please go ahead and make sure to do that by February 7th. So Canvas essay number 1 due on the 6th, and then the initial skills self-assessment due on the 7th. But how I would like to spend the rest of our time tonight is talking about American government. And again, we talk about American government in this class just so we can create an even playing field for everyone, irrespective of what your undergraduate major may have been, or irrespective of when you last took an American government class at the undergraduate level, because public administration is so intertwined with our American political institutions and American political culture. So for some of you, the discussion tonight will be very much of a refresher. If you haven't had American government before, then maybe some additional new information there for you. But our system of American government is really predicated upon 2 basic pillars: separation of powers and federalism. And as you probably remember, separation of powers and federalism are both oriented around the idea of limiting power. With separation of powers, we are limiting power horizontally across branches of government. So the framers created a 3-branch government: the Congress, the legislative branch, the executive headed up by the president, and obviously the judicial branch headed up by the Supreme Court. That's a horizontal separation of powers. One of the Federalist Papers that was written by Alexander Hamilton, Federalist Paper number 28, which we don't read for this class, but it's an important paper nonetheless. In Federalist Paper number 28, Alexander Hamilton talks about balancing ambition against ambition. And when you think about the frame of reference that the framers had when they created this new government, they had a frame of reference that included being under a monarchy. And so, one of the main reasons why they broke from England to begin with was, taxation without representation, not having a seat at the table in terms of decision making. And so they knew the experience of being under the yoke of a monarchy. And obviously they wanted to limit that type of executive power. But on the other side of the equation, they also had the experience of the Articles of Confederation, our first constitution that just simply didn't work very well. And you had a chance to read the Articles of Confederation before class tonight. So there are a lot of flaws in the articles. And one of the primary flaws in the articles is that the national government was not strong enough and didn't have the power and the ability to do enough. And so they kind of have these competing pressures placed upon them. They knew they didn't want to be in another monarchy, so they wanted to limit executive power, but they also knew that they had to cede a little bit more power to the national government in order to have protection and regulation of the economy and all those things the national government started doing. So with separation of powers, we're dividing up the power horizontally across 3 different branches of government. Then we also divide power in our second pillar vertically through our system of federalism. And federalism refers to the separation of powers between national and state governments, where we articulate the types of things and the types of duties of the national government versus the types of duties of state governments. So our 2 pillars are separation of powers for a horizontal balance of power, and then federalism for our vertical balance of power. Then we also know that our system of government is both a democracy as well as a republican form of government. As a democracy, everyone should have the ability to participate in their own governance. And we have a lot of elements of direct democracy in some of our states and fewer elements of direct democracy in others. But with a direct democracy, people are making decisions. They are actually engaging in their own self-governance. Here in California, we have several different mechanisms for direct democracy, if you will. One mechanism we have here in California is the use of a referendum. In a referendum, the state legislature decides to put an issue on the ballot and allow the voters to make a decision about that issue. So in a lot of states that have a referendum process, state legislatures have placed the issues such as the legalization of recreational marijuana, and they have placed that on the ballot to allow voters to vote directly on that issue. Here in California, a lot of our financial issues oftentimes end up getting on the ballot through a referendum. But in a referendum, the state legislature decides to put an issue on the ballot. So that's one mechanism of a direct democracy. Also here in California, we have the initiative process. In the initiative process, and what makes that different from a referendum is in the initiative process, voters, citizens can put issues on the ballot themselves. So in the initiative, you would get a petition. If you got enough people to sign that petition and those signatures were then verified by the Secretary of State, then an issue could then be put on the ballot for the next ensuing election. So we also have done a lot of things through an initiative process as well. But whether by a referendum or by an initiative, by using those mechanisms, are allowing people to engage in making decisions directly and making decisions directly at the ballot box. Again, we've got referenda and we've got initiatives here in the state of California. Some other states don't have the same referendum process that we have. Some states do not have the possibility of an initiative allowing citizens to place issues on the ballot. So in terms of direct democracy, you see some variation across the country. But here in California and a lot of Western states, we use referenda and initiatives very frequently. But we're not only a democracy whereby power is coming from the people and people are engaging in their own self-governance, we are also a republican form of government. As a republican form of government, we select people, we elect representatives to make decisions for us in Washington, D.C., in Sacramento, or the Long Beach City Council. We're electing people to represent us. So we oftentimes refer to our form of government as a democratic republic, because we have some elements of direct democracy, but we also have elements of a republican form of government as well. As you'll see next week when we go through the Constitution guarantees to citizens a republican form of government in every state. So states are required to have a republican form of government. They're required to have elections and elect representatives to make decisions. And so we are guaranteed that type of a republican form of government. So both a democracy as well as a republic. Being a democracy, allowing people to engage in their own self-governance. And being a Republican form of government, allowing people to vote directly on their representatives. Those ideas are predicated on what we call social contract theory. And if you took political science at the undergraduate level, you're probably very familiar with philosophers such as Thomas Hobbes and John Locke. Social contract theory comes directly from John Locke, a political philosopher in the 1600s. Locke argued that power comes from the people. And so people will then enter into a contract with their government. And in entering into this contract, what people will do is they will give up certain rights to the government, and then the government will promise to utilize those rights and that power judiciously for the welfare of society. So it's a contract that we have between people and their government. Thomas Jefferson, who wrote the Declaration of Independence, one of our primary framers, was very much a fan of John Locke. And so what Thomas Jefferson did is he borrowed very liberally from a lot of the writings of John Locke. If you read John Locke's second treatise on government, you'll see John Locke talk about the right to life, liberty, and property. Thomas Jefferson took that language and wrote about the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So John Locke and his social contract theory really is a major impetus behind the type of system of government that the framers established. So our system of government is predicated on this idea of social contract theory, this contract between people and their government. That's a relatively novel thought in that other political philosophers such as Thomas Hobbes believe the opposite, in that the power was governmental and then government decided what powers and what rights to give to citizens. Under social contract theory, the rights and the powers belong to the citizens, and they decide what powers to then give to the government and enter into this contract. Obviously, that contract that people enter into with their government, that is a constitution. The Constitution is a contract between the people and their government. Our first constitution, our first contract that we had was the Articles of Confederation. And again, I gave you that link so you could read the Articles of Confederation before class tonight. We're not going to go through all the different aspects of the Articles, but when you read the Articles, you probably saw some flaws in the way in which the governmental structure was established. And just to, again, give you a highlight of some of the major flaws and some of the major problems with the Articles of Confederation. One major flaw in the Articles of Confederation is that it didn't really establish much of a national government at all. When you read through the Articles, the only time that you see the term United States of America capitalized as a proper noun occurs with the name of the country. And so the Articles will say that the style of this confederation, and by style they mean the name of this confederation shall be the United States of America in capital letters as a proper noun. It's about the only time you're going to see United States of America as a proper noun used throughout the Articles of Confederation. Throughout the Articles of Confederation, whenever we refer to the United States, we typically refer to it as United States in Congress assembled, meaning that we are a national government and there is national power. When the states get together into this meeting known as the Congress, that's when we have a United States. United States in Congress assembled. The Articles use that term Congress as a meeting. So tonight we're having a Congress of PPA 500. We're having a meeting of PPA 500. But Congress was not being used in the way in which we think about it today. It wasn't being used. Today we think about Congress as a brick and mortar institution. And we think of it as an enduring institution, the House and the Senate. That's not really how the framers looked at it when they wrote the Articles of Confederation. It was a meeting of the states. At this meeting of the states, at this Congress, the states had the opportunity and the ability to recall their delegates at any time. So if a state didn't like the way that Congress was going, states could just basically pick up their marbles and go home. They could recall their delegates, say, come on back home. We're not going to play in this sandbox. The Articles of Confederation very explicitly sets up what it calls a firm league of friendship between the states. A firm league of friendship is all well and good, but it doesn't have the same enduring quality as a nation. And so in a firm league of friendship, New York was agreeing to help out Pennsylvania, who was agreeing to help out Virginia, but it was just a league of friendship. And you know what happens with friendships, and friendships can be very temporary and very transient in nature. The Articles of Confederation didn't set up much of a national government at all. It established the legislative branch, established the Congress. The president was more or less just a figurehead because the president came from the membership of Congress. So the president, the executive, really didn't have much power whatsoever. It was really the states and the state delegations in this Congress. That's where the power resided. So you had a very weak national government. You had this firm league of friendship that had been established between these participating states, states that could then decide not to participate at any time they so chose. Well, the Articles of Confederation were in place, they were ratified, and they were our first contract, our first constitution between the people and their government. But it started unraveling relatively quickly. And if you remember from your history classes, there was this kind of focusing event, this triggering event that occurred that led us to the Constitutional Convention and the Constitution we have today. And that was this event known as Shays' Rebellion. And if you remember from your history classes in Shays' Rebellion, you had a situation where you had a retired Army captain by the name of Daniel Shays who led a rebellion of farmers. And your farmers were upset because they were losing their land, they were being foreclosed upon. And so they decided to rebel and march for their rights, and they were led by this retired Army captain. It was difficult for the state militia to put down, in Massachusetts, to put down this insurrection of farmers led by a retired Army captain, because we didn't have any type of national standing army. Our protection was being provided by individual state militias. This led to a lot of concern on the part of folks that if it takes so long for a state militia to put down this rebellion of farmers and a retired Army captain, how would we fare if we were faced with another foreign invasion? How would we fare if France or England came over the Atlantic Ocean and decided to invade? So there was a concern that we didn't have a strong enough national defense under these Articles of Confederation. Another problem with the Articles is that in order to amend the Articles, in order to make changes to the Articles, you had to have a unanimous vote of all 13 states. Well, you know how difficult it is to get a unanimous vote on anything, whether it be changing the Constitution or where you're going to go and get lunch. It's difficult to get unanimity. And so since we couldn't get unanimity on how to amend the Articles, we ended up with a constitutional convention. And the purpose of the Constitutional Convention was not to come up with a brand new constitution, but rather to merely amend the Articles, to create a stronger national government with a stronger national defense. So we're only going to amend the Articles in this Constitutional Convention. Well, at the Constitutional Convention, things didn't go the way in which they were originally planned. And at the Constitutional Convention, we had three main conflicts that the delegates at the convention had to deal with. The one major conflict that they had was the conflict between one group known as the Federalists and another group that became known as the Anti-Federalists. The Federalists, led by people like James Madison, believed that we really needed to throw out the Articles and come up with a brand new constitution that would create a much more vigorous and a much stronger national government. We needed a stronger national government for national defense, but we also needed a stronger national government to help us in terms of regulating the economy. Because before we had the Constitution, we had states that actually had different currencies that they were using. And you can imagine how difficult commerce is when you travel from one state to another and every state is using a different currency. So we really needed more regulation of the economy. That was the argument made by the Federalists. They wanted a stronger national government throughout the Articles, replace the Articles with this brand new Constitution. Then the other faction were the Anti-Federalists, led by people like Sherman. And the Anti-Federalists, they believed in states' rights. So they did not want to get rid of the Articles. They just wanted to amend the Articles to give us more national defense, but they wanted to keep state governments as the sovereigns over a national government. So you can see how these two groups came to loggerheads with each other. Madison and the Federalists literally got to the Constitutional Convention before the Anti-Federalists did. You think about how difficult it was to travel at that time. You didn't have paved roads in most parts of the country. You were moving through, traveling with horses, through mud, sometimes mud up to the horse's knees. It was difficult to get anywhere quickly. But Madison and the Federalists got there first. And by getting there first, what Madison was able to skillfully do is he was able to basically arrange the questions and say, here's what we're going to do, here is what we are planning on doing, so that when the Anti-Federalists finally arrived, the ball was already moving toward getting rid of the Articles and replacing them with a brand new Constitution. But one of the reasons why Madison was so successful at getting the Anti-Federalists to agree to throw out the Articles and come up with a brand new contract, a new Constitution, is that he was able to skillfully press the economic nerve of the Anti-Federalists. If you think about the delegates who were at the Constitutional Convention, they fit a certain demographic profile. They were all white, they were all male, and they were all property owners, because in order to participate at that point in time, you had to fit those three main criteria. Well, those property owners were the creditors. They were those individuals who had loaned the money to make the Revolutionary War possible. As creditors, they wanted to get their debts repaid. They wanted to get their money back. So what Madison was able to do is he was able to convince the Anti-Federalists that the Articles did not create a strong enough national government to allow them to get their debts repaid. So basically what his argument was, you want to get your debts repaid, you want to get your money back, we're going to have a new Constitution with a much stronger national government. Once he was able to get the Anti-Federalists to agree that they wanted more out of the national government than just national defense, that they actually wanted some economic activity coming out of the national government so they could get their money back, it was game over. And so the Federalists were able to get the Anti-Federalists to agree to get rid of the Articles and replace the Articles with this brand new Constitution. But at the convention, that was one of your main conflicts, was between these Federalists versus the Anti-Federalists. A second main conflict that we had at the Constitutional Convention was the conflict between large states and small states. So the big question was, how are we going to have representation in Congress? Large states came up with what they called the Virginia Plan. One of the large states was Virginia, so the Virginia Plan. And the Virginia Plan called for proportional representation. So states with more population would have more representatives in this newly created legislative branch. The small states came up with their own plan, the New Jersey Plan, that called for equal representation. So you can't, those are diametrically opposed things. Proportional representation, the Virginia Plan, equal representation under the New Jersey Plan. So the great compromise that they came up with was what was known as the Connecticut Compromise, in that we would create a bicameral Congress, a two-house Congress, a House of Representatives based upon proportional representation, and a Senate based upon equal representation. And again, that oftentimes is known as the Great Compromise. A relatively novel idea at the time, that instead of just having one legislative body, you would have two. And you would have proportional representation in one house and equal representation in the other. So that's how they compromised to get around that large state, small state type of disagreement. The third conflict at the Constitutional Convention, they did not handle nearly as well. And I think you make a good argument that they dealt with it in a very horrendous fashion. And that was the conflict between non-slave states and slave states. The way in which they dealt with that in order to get agreement on the Constitution is they dealt with it in two ways. One way was with the 3/5 compromise. The 3/5 compromise saying that population of enslaved people would count as 3/5 of a non-enslaved person for the purposes of counting representation in the House of Representatives. The second solution, they quote unquote solution they came up with was in terms of the slave trade. In the Declaration of Independence, in the original version written by Thomas Jefferson, even though he was a slave owner, he had a passage in the original Declaration of Independence talking about the injustices of the system of slavery and the slave trade. Representatives from southern states, slave states, got him to take that out of the Declaration of Independence. So clearly, slave states were very concerned about a prohibition and abolishment of the slave trade. And so what they were able to get into the new Constitution was a prohibition against banning the slave trade until at least the year 1808. So whereas the framers, I think, did a very skillful job in terms of the anti-federalist, federalist disagreement, a very skillful job in terms of mediating the disagreement between large and small states, did an equally horrendous job in terms of the compromise they came up with to try and mediate the differences between slave states and non-slave states. But all these compromises that were developed in the Constitutional Convention ended up going into this new Constitution. And our Constitution really is a series of compromises. As a series of compromises, there are a lot of ambiguities, obviously, that are built into our Constitution. And over the past 200 years, it's been the Supreme Court that has been the ultimate arbiter of what all these compromises truly do mean. There's a lot of conflict in terms of the language in the Constitution as well. And next week, as we go through the Constitution, I will point out to you some of that conflicting language, things such as the Elastic Clause versus the Reserve Powers Amendment, the Elastic Clause versus enumerated powers, and the Supremacy Clause versus the 10th Amendment. And we'll see how some of those conflicts have really led to a lot of disagreement about the interpretation of the Constitution over the past 200 years. But we'll get into a discussion of the Constitution itself next week. But when that Constitution was adopted at the Constitutional Convention, in order for that Constitution to be ratified according to Article 7, it would have to have the ratification of 9 out of 13 states. That once 9 out of 13 states ratified the Constitution, the new Constitution would go into effect. And they were relatively successful at getting 10 out of 13 states to ratify the Constitution relatively quickly. Within a couple of years, you had 10 out of 13 states ratify it, so the Constitution went into effect. The problem, though, was of those 3 holdout states, one of those holdouts was the state of New York. New York really was the linchpin of commerce in the colonies. If you didn't have New York, you really didn't have anything. Because you didn't have New York as part of this new government, you weren't going to be able to have commerce flowing in through the ports of New York. You weren't going to be able to have that type of interstate commerce that you needed in order to grow as a country. So the framers knew they had to get New York on board in ratifying this new Constitution. So there were 2 strategies that were used to convince the citizens of New York. One strategy was the Bill of Rights. As you all know, we immediately amended the Constitution with 10 initial amendments known as the Bill of Rights that grant certain rights and liberties to individuals and states. Again, to reassure the citizens of New York that this new national government was not going to become too powerful. Then the second thing that they did is you had John Jay, Alexander Hamilton, and James Madison, 3 individuals coming together to write what came to be known as the Federalist Papers. The Federalist Papers were a collection of 85 essays, the vast majority written by Alexander Hamilton, well over 50 written by Hamilton. I believe it was about 27 written by James Madison, only 3 written by John Jay because he fell ill and was only able to write 3 of them. But these collection of 85 essays were written to, again, try and convince the citizens of New York to trust this new constitution, to trust that this new national government was not going to be too strong and was not going to take away their rights and the rights of their state government. For this class, we have pulled out really two of those Federalist papers to focus on, Federalist paper number 10 and Federalist paper number 39. But for the sake of time tonight, we're just going to focus on Federalist number 10, and then we'll talk more about Federalist 39 next week. But in Federalist paper number 10, Madison talks to us about, in a democracy, you have a lot of different people and you have a lot of different opinions. Madison referred to this new form of government as being what he called a compound republic. As a compound republic, you have a lot of different heterogeneous opinions, a lot of different heterogeneous groups that all get to participate in decision making. Before Madison came up with this idea of a compound republic, the prevailing political philosophy at that time was that the most effective and efficient form of government would be what they called a compact republic. And Montesquieu and other political philosophers really supported this idea of a compact republic. And a compact republic would be a form of government whereby you have a small jurisdiction governing a small number of people who had a very homogeneous distribution of ideas and priorities and values. And they felt that by keeping your government compact, that is the only way to efficiently and effectively govern that jurisdiction. Madison counters that with his compound republic by arguing that what we need to do is we need to balance faction against faction. We need to balance idea against idea. And his compound republic today has really become known as what's called the marketplace of ideas. That in our political culture, we have this great marketplace of ideas where people can participate and share their ideas with each other. It's a type of power distribution known as pluralism. And so Madison really believed in this idea of pluralism, this compound republic, whereby we have all these different ideas, all these different factions, and we can balance faction against faction. When you read Federalist number 10, if you haven't read it yet, you'll see that he argues that factions, these different groups and these different ideas, are inevitable in a democracy. That anytime you allow people to participate, you are going to have these different ideas and these different groups that oftentimes will come into conflict with each other. That conflict is a necessary component, a necessary artifact of a pluralistic democracy. So he says, if you have these factions, which you will, there are only two ways to deal with them. One way to deal with those factions is by eliminating them. So having the government come in and saying, you cannot hold that idea, you cannot have that idea, you cannot form this group. He says that is antithetical to a democracy, that you cannot tell people they can't think a certain way, and if you do, you don't have a democracy. So he takes that first idea of eliminating factions and throws it out the window and says that's something we cannot do because if you eliminate factions, you are destroying and eliminating democracy. So he said the second way in which we can deal with factions is by controlling their effects. Assuming that these factions will exist, we need to again balance faction against faction. So he assumes that we will be factionalized as a government. And factions, we're talking about different groups and different ideas. So yeah, Jay, they could very well be political parties. And today we oftentimes think about factions within the parameters of political parties. If you go back to Madison's time, we didn't have the same type of party structure that we have today. George Washington actually warned us against political parties, and his farewell address told us to avoid forming political parties because he thought it would be destructive to have these parties going at each other all the time. But yes, today we usually think about factions in terms of political parties. You can also think about factions in terms of interest groups. We have a lot of interest groups today that are really focused on certain issues and lobby Congress to try and get legislation that favors those issues. So oftentimes interest groups can also be seen as factions as well. So what I'm asking you to do in this first graded Canvas essay is to, after reading Madison's argument in Federalist 10 and realizing that a democracy will create factions, answer the question, do you believe we are more factionalized today than we were back when Madison wrote Federalist Paper number 10? And how do we deal with these factions? What's the most expeditious and most efficient way to deal with these factions, to try and do, as Madison says, control their effects? So I just kind of want to present Federalist number 10 to you because that will be the subject of your first Canvas essay. Are we more factionalized today, and what can be done to try and control some of the negative impacts and negative effects of factions? Next week, we'll talk a little bit more about Federalist 39, which is my favorite Federalist paper. And in Federalist 39, Madison kind of gives us a robust defense of the Constitution and why the Constitution is something that we should not be afraid of and something that should be ratified by the citizens of New York. But with these Federalist papers, if you're interested, I have a link there. You can read all the Federalist papers if you're interested in doing that. All of the Federalist papers are written as kind of a sales pitch to the citizens of New York and the anti-Federalists to get them on board with ratifying this new Constitution. So they are all written from a certain perspective, and that's a very pro-Constitution perspective, trying to get people to buy into this new Constitution. And yeah, as Lizette says, the solution is obviously a large republic, this compound republic. By having a compound republic, we can have all these different factions that can balance against each other, and one faction be balanced by another faction, and that's how you control their effects. If you had a compact republic, you would not have all these factions to balance against each other, and you would then have the tyranny of one faction over everyone else. And that's something that the framers were very, very concerned about, because they had lived under a tyrannical monarchy for many years before the Constitution. Now, the Constitution, we obviously only have a couple minutes left, so the Constitution is something we're going to have to talk about next time. And also, given our limited amount of time, I think we'll just stop here and then we'll pick up with the rest of this information next week, because up to this point in time, we've been talking about our form of government as being a form of government that is predicated upon a limitation of power. But we haven't really done much yet talking about the term power and what we mean by the idea of power. So where I would like to start next week is with a discussion of this idea of power. And I will introduce you to one of my favorite authors from many years ago, a man by the name of John Gaventa. And John Gaventa's study of power in rural Appalachia. And we'll talk about his study of a coal mining town and the way in which he came up with different nuanced definitions of power. Because after all, everything we've talked about tonight has been putting together a constitution to try and limit power, whether we're limiting the power of factions, whether we're limiting the power of the national government, whether we're limiting the power through separation of powers of a legislature, an executive, and a judicial branch, whether we're limiting the powers vertically through our system of federalism to limit the power of federal versus state governments. Our Constitution is all about this idea of power and how we limit that power. So next week, we'll start off with a discussion of this idea of power. We will also then talk about federalism and this vertical separation of powers and how that has developed over the years. And we'll talk about what this discussion means for the field of public administration. Then we will turn our attention to a discussion of the Constitution. We'll go through the Constitution, go through the 7 articles and 27 amendments to the Constitution. We'll see how far that takes us, and then hopefully there'll be some time remaining that we can then get into our next topic of accountability and ethics to then get you ready for your next Canvas essay. But again, we're almost out of time. We only have a couple minutes left, so we'll stop it there for tonight. Remember, you do have those 2 assignments coming up. You have your Canvas essay on the Federalist Paper number 10. Please do remember, give me an initial post and then respond to 2 classmates, and then also turn in your initial skills self-assessment if you have not done so already. Any questions or anything at all in our last minute tonight before we all turn into pumpkins and our class session ends?
I got one question.
Yeah, go ahead, Ted.
You give so much information that's very important to at least be exposed to. So my question, for the Second Amendment, I have a question. Should I wait till you talk about it? Because I got one simple question that you might be able to answer.
Yeah, I would say let's do that next week, because next week we will go through all the amendments, and when we get to the Second Amendment, then we can certainly talk about that then. That'd be the perfect
pleasure.
time.
Thank you.
Let's see. Regina says 2 responses to classmates discussion posts are required. Yes. So you'll give me an initial response to the prompt that I've given you on Federalist Paper number 10, and then respond to 2 of your classmates. The responses to your classmates, again, can be much shorter than your initial post. We're looking at maybe a paragraph is certainly sufficient for those responses to your classmates. 2, 3, 4 paragraphs for your response to my initial posts. So you'll have three posts that you'll be making for next week. That is correct. When are the responses due? I've got again all the assignments due dates on there. If everything needs to be done, your initial post and your responses to 2 classmates need to be done by February 6th. I do ask that if you could do your initial post as early as possible so that people have something to respond to, that would be great. But all 3 of your posts must be posted no later than midnight on February the 6th. Okay. All right, I see we're completely out of time, so I need to let you go. Next week, again, we'll finish up this material, get into a discussion of the Constitution. I look forward to reading your Canvas essays, and if you haven't done your initial skills self-assessment yet, please get that submitted by the 7th, and I will get you feedback. My feedback will basically be thank you for the assessment, because there were really no right or wrong answers on that assessment. Okay, thank you, everyone. I'll get this recording posted to our Canvas site no later than tomorrow morning. So have a great evening, great remainder of your week, and I'll talk to you again next Tuesday.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.